Ingenious Mind Summit 2021 tiene el honor de contar con la presencia de Virginia Mott, quien es Senior Manager de Marketing en Nito Américas con 15 años de experiencia en la industria. Estudió mercadotecnia y negocios internacionales en la Universidad de Augsburg, así como una maestría en la Universidad Estatal de Montclair. De igual forma, contamos con la presencia de Mike Pryor Jr., quien es vicepresidente del área de desarrollo para Nito Américas con 15 años de experiencia en la industria. Estudió ingeniería mecánica y cuenta con un certificado avanzado para ejecutivos en gestión, innovación y tecnología por MIT.
Welcome to NITO's America's Discovery Center. My name's Virginia Mott, and I'm the Senior Marketing Manager here at NITO. The America's Discovery Center is NITO's first innovation center here in the Americas. NITO, a global polymer technology company headquartered in Japan, opened this center in 2018 to celebrate our 100th anniversary. This center is designed to offer a unique experience to inspire stakeholders and discover the capabilities of NITO, and to collaborate to create the next wonders for society. Visitors can explore technologies, discuss sustainability goals, and work together to solve industry challenges. Customer experience is a critical part of the America's Discovery Center. So I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about what it is and why it's so important. Customer experience is a customer's perception of your company throughout the entire sales journey. Each time a customer has an opportunity to engage with your company and brand, this is a touch point. Shown here is an example of some typical touch points a customer might experience on their sales journey. The first touch point might be the first time they see or hear your product or brand. This could be an ad on the radio or experiencing a product through a friend. Next, they might go to the web to see what other people are saying about the product. Their internet searches might prove a prime opportunity for other touchpoints in the form of ads or sponsorships. After seeing what others have to say, they might next do their own research by checking your website to see what product variations you have and at what price point. Once they know that they're serious about the product and it fits their needs, they might come to a showroom to experience it in person. The purchasing process itself offers a number of touchpoint opportunities, including the office itself, the paperwork, the staff, and the personalization of all these touchpoints. Lastly, after a customer has made a purchase, what kind of follow-up experience do they have? All of these little things combined makes up a customer experience. Even your logo makes an impression. The bottom line is that a customer experience is about how elements make a customer feel about your brand. Customer experience and customer perception is not something that you can fully control, but it is something you can influence. The current trend for customer experience is driving towards a highly personalized and digital-driven experience. Today, customers want instant gratification and a clean user interface. A high-quality customer experience should allow customers to choose their own adventure, if you will. Customers want multiple options to explore on their own time and in their own way. Digital tools like websites, apps, and other new technologies can allow for just that. But it's incredibly important that these tools be easy to navigate, be intuitive, and of course, secure. Another component to high-quality customer service is personalization. There are a variety of tools, including new AI platforms, that can gather information on a customer's history and interests and make content recommendations, generate custom product samples. Ever see a social media ad with your name on a t-shirt? Or a more common, more low-tech option is simply including a customer's name in an automated email. When conducting high-tech personalization like this, it's important to be good enough that a customer feels like you're saving them time, but not so good that a customer feels like you're being invasive. A low-tech way to personalize is to do it in a human way. Make people feel special through a human connection. Today, all we get in the mail is junk. So a simple handwritten thank you card is often deeply appreciated. Oftentimes, it's the little things that make people notice the most. Birthday cards, their favorite coffee, remembering their favorite sports team, or asking about their pet. Some of my favorite examples of personal customer experiences that I have experienced are subtle jokes on packaging or parts, sometimes referred to as Easter eggs, like what you see here of the dog in the box. Holiday cards can sometimes be directed at the pet instead of the owner, and a business responding to your online review. These personal experiences can be incredibly effective, but they're usually more labor-intensive from a human resource perspective. Online reviews and social platforms need to be continuously monitored as customers expect you to respond rapidly, and the staff need to be highly trained on how to handle unique situations in a manner that matches the brand persona, is appropriate, and yet still human. Customer experience is always about continuous improvement, and we can learn something every time a customer has a touch point with us.
Because at Nitto, innovation and process improvement is something we do in collaboration with our customers.
We start by identifying challenges, and then we use our core competencies to identify which of our technologies can be useful. These core competencies are things that Nitto is experts in: adhesion, coating, polymer function control, and polymer analysis and evaluation. These help us get to the heart of a problem. Next, we start by developing solutions by adding value in the form of functions. Functions are a material's ability to do something. When we combine functions together, we're able to create solutions. Currently, we're working on solutions in the fields of next-generation mobility, human life, and infrastructure technology. This process of finding the next generation of solutions is a process we call Sanshin, a business model for sustainable growth. Sanshin means 3 new in Japanese. We start with an existing product and are able to evolve it by developing it into either a new product or finding a new application in a different market. These products can develop into something entirely unique, driving innovation in entirely new markets. Over time, this process repeats itself as technologies change and market demands grow.
One example of Sanshin was the development of our surface protection vinyl, SPV. It started with our first plastic tape for electrical insulation. Eventually, someone realized this material offered great surface protection, and they realized they could die cut it for hubcaps for protection during transportation. The product was altered again when elongation was added, so it could be used in deep drawing applications for stainless steel. The product evolved once more with the need for surface protection with anti-static properties for devices. And that white film you see on new cars? WrapGuard was developed for protecting cars during shipping. Even today, this product continues to evolve as markets and needs change.
Thanks to this process, Nitto has developed over 13,500 products in more than 70 business fields. Nitto products help create vivid pictures on your devices, filters clean water for cities, and improves user comfort and safety in cars. You may not know it, but Nitto is all around you.
Sanshin is how we've been able to grow over such a long period of time. Sanshin is something that can be applied to products or processes, and it's just one way that Nitto's been able to grow and expand our business. Nitto works in dozens of different developed industries, including automotive. Today, we'd like to explore some of the efficiency challenges these industries face, as well as discuss some of the techniques and methods that Nitto uses in order to streamline our processes. I'd like to turn it over to Mike Prairie, Vice President of Area Development, to learn more.
Today, the world is changing faster than ever. New technologies and an increasingly involved customer base are creating rapid demands in the market. This can be challenging for large and established companies to keep up with. We know because we're one of them. Today, we're going to explore 4 topics: how we can improve cycle times, considerations for reducing assembly time, the value of communication, and how to make data-driven decisions to build successful and profitable business. Finding ways to improve cycle time can be difficult. When dealing with physical processes, it can be hard to pivot quickly, and infrastructure investments can be very costly. One tactic Nito likes to utilize to improve our cycle time is something we call Mugendai, an initiative we created to boost productivity. Mu of Mugendai means to remove. A key area where we focus on is elimination of projects through our staging gate process. Leaders are required to prioritize projects based on the value to Nito. Our best resources, true with every company, are very limited, so the lowest value projects are dropped routinely. Evaluation is done according to a consistent 5C analysis. Gen means to reduce. So with COP26 just completed in Scotland, countries have recommitted to CO2 reductions. Many corporations have also committed to reduce CO2 both in their own production as well as throughout the supply chain. At Nito, we strive to achieve these goals in the automotive market by considering the entire product life cycle. Our area development team measures all new products by their positive effect on the environment, both in production and for our customers. In order for Ford to reach its goals, you need to vet suppliers on that commitment as well. Die means to replace. A key driver of our innovation process is our search for local supply opportunities to replace imported goods. Given critical supply chain disruption during COVID, reducing the length of that supply chain is more critical than ever. That's why our area development group values local suppliers who are key partners and de-emphasize distant suppliers even if they come with a lower short-term cost. By becoming more efficient, we're then able to reinvest our resources into other higher value-added activities. Mugendai is often associated with cost cutting, and while that is a viable option, greater value can often come from evaluating and streamlining processes. Sometimes that means a short-term investment for long-term gain. As we're conducting activities like Mugendai, it's critical to work together with customers and suppliers. Another tactic that Nito has utilized both internally and with our customers is robotic assembly. Hydronautics, a Nito company headquartered in California, is a world leader in reverse osmosis membranes. Hydronautics was faced with production challenges to meet the growing demand for those products that bring clean water to customers around the world. Employees in their California facility spent a great deal of time moving the heavy membranes, some 30 pounds each, rather than focusing on other critical steps in production. Over the past several years, Hydronautics has installed 12 robots, some of which are shown here in yellow, and fully automated more than 15 machines to relieve workers of that burden and substantially reduce injuries. During the COVID pandemic, these labor-saving devices have proved key in keeping production running. Our customers demand more than just a product. They want help with solutions. We help them apply automation as we've done in our other businesses for their needs. Lagenelux and Nitohard, for instance, are critical to helping automotive customers reduce sound and reinforce metal on car bodies, which need to be as thin as possible to improve fuel economy. Nito's worked with these customers to automate the application process of both products, further increasing efficiency.
It's important to remember that cycle times can be improved not just by products, but also by processes. One case study of this is our roll-to-panel process. In the original process, we were cutting optical film and sending it to customers who would apply it to panels. This process was time-consuming, and we wanted to reduce the cycle time for customers. So we installed equipment at the customer site to apply the film directly to the panels in a roll form. This change led to a reduction of processing and transportation costs and also improved production efficiency. This new process is now patented as roll-to-panel.
In the future, the automotive industry will continue to find ways to simplify assembly. Let's talk to Jeff Walbert about where he sees the industry going.
Hi, Ford team. This is Jeff Walbert from NITO in Novi, Michigan. Thank you very much for inviting all of us to join your Ford Ingenious Minds conference. This is a real honor to be able to participate with you all in this event.
Jeff, why is assembly simplification important?
It's an interesting question. So, assembly simplification is important from a standpoint of reducing cycle time and labor costs. In general, the basic principle, keep it simple, stupid, applies in all areas of life. So when you look at vehicle assembly, typically simpler means faster. It means more repeatable quality and less ergonomic issues. So it has many, many pillars of importance when you look at simpler designs and simple assembly.
And what considerations are important when choosing suppliers?
Mike, that's a great question. The automotive industry today continues to evolve and look for tighter timelines, faster development cycles, more virtual evaluation tools. So, when you look at suppliers that are most effective in this space, you have to have fast response, quick turnaround, rapid prototype parts. At NITO, we have what we call a Transportation Technical Center, or TTC. We use our TTC all the time for component level or vehicle level evaluations. We use it for rapid prototyping parts for countermeasures and late adoptions during the vehicle development cycle. And we use it to just support our customers even with low volume pre-production builds if needed, if the timing is so tight and we can't have tooling prepared in time. So, basically speed is important, quality and quick support is critical, and just being a relied upon go-to supplier is something that is very important.
In the age of digital working, does geography even matter anymore?
That's a great question. Over the last year and a half, all of us have had more virtual meetings than probably in the last 5 years combined. And what's interesting is when you look at that with the proper tools, with video, if you have, we've had situations with customers that have come to our Transportation Technical Center, or TTC. We've done component level evaluations. We've had customers on either a Teams video or a Zoom video so they could actually join the test from an offsite location and participate and see how the results were. It's a very effective tool. So if you have the proper IT tools, the one advantage to virtual meetings is you also have access to a more diverse technical base of experience. So at NITO, we have experts all over the country, all over the world for that matter. And by doing virtual meetings, it allows us to pull in resources that maybe couldn't join a face-to-face on-site meeting. So there's pros and cons to both. But I think overall, with the proper IT tools, virtual meetings are very effective.
How should we consider future changes in technology, policy, and consumer demand when making decisions today?
I think it's interesting for the U.S. automotive market, the trend to electric vehicles and hybrid electric vehicles is definitely growing. And with rising gasoline prices, a pending infrastructure bill, which is going through the U.S. government for approval, there's a lot of external activities that's going to increase the speed of adoption for electric and hybrid electric vehicles within the United States. So, we as NITO, our goal and responsibility and need in all this is to identify our customers' changing needs based on the changing automotive market and business, so that we are presenting our customers with products that solve the issues at hand. So for NITO, it's an interesting time. It's a very dynamic time. We get a lot of new requests that we have not seen before. But for our engineering team and our sales team, we find it's a lot of fun. And if you like taking on new challenges, this era that we're in the automotive business is really an exciting time for everybody.
How do we discern what is essential when it comes to efficiency and simplification?
That's a great question. There are limits to efficiency and simplification. So, when I hear that question, my first thought is we have to maintain quality. So quality ends up being the requirement that kind of limits how much you can simplify a process or a design, right? So you still have to meet your overarching quality and performance objectives. So those minimum requirements are what set the limit, as far as I'm concerned, as far as how much you can simplify a product or process.
Poor communication can be one of the fastest killers of efficiency. Just like sensors in an autonomous vehicle can get overwhelmed by too much information, so can we humans. Having a defined process of innovation with predetermined decision makers is critical to keep information with the key players. Without such a system, decision-making gets bogged down. One method for improving communications is to have clearly defined business processes. A best practice for product development, for instance, includes key stages, gates to proceed between each stage, and defined PICs, or persons in charge, for each activity. By defining PICs, ownership sense is created so that once you get people who are invested in the entire product development cycle, communication is improved, it's targeted to those who most need the information, it's limited, especially in a project where confidential material is involved, it's especially critical. So the process itself enables both efficient and necessary communication to happen. So I'd like to go over briefly a best practice for product development and give you an idea of who the key parties are that are involved in communication at each stage. So for a typical stage and gate system, we would go through starting with stage 0 or discovery to stage 1, feasibility, stage 2, development, stage 3, validation, and stage 4, launch. So to give you an idea of what a process like this looks like, you begin with many ideas at the beginning. The project pipeline is much wider at the beginning of this process, with ideas that are communicated to the product development team directly by customers, by salespeople noting unmet needs in the market, by identified applications of company technology. And this all leads to the beginning of this process, this discovery stage. So the discovery stage and the feasibility stage are probably my favorite because they're the most creative. There's a lot of cross-departmental, cross-functional communication that's critical in order for projects to be initially vetted. But, of course, the keys come later when the product is more clearly defined. And that's where we get into some of the more precise details that really are required in order to make a product that meets everyone's requirements and satisfies the customer. So starting out from the discovery stage, the two key departments are typically R&D and sales and marketing. And one of the observations that I've made at really every company that I've worked with is that one of the most challenging parts of product development is getting good communication between the sales and the R&D department. Sales are obviously at the forefront in direct contact with customers, knowledgeable about market needs. R&D, on the other hand, is most knowledgeable about the company's technical capabilities, current projects that are ongoing, most knowledgeable about what's required ultimately to make something that's manufacturable. And you really need to get those two parties connected. And the way to do that, again, is through this product development process where you require that those parties are involved at the very initial stage of product development. Some detailed steps during this discovery stage include strategic analysis based on corporate strategy, looking at what the corporate overall goals are. Again, in the automotive area, EV obviously is a very high priority for all automotive companies. Specific within EV, obviously there are strata that provide advantage for one company over competitors in the market. And this is the stage where those considerations are discussed, again, between R&D typically and sales. And conclusions are made as far as what direction to go for the product development or service development process. This will conclude with creating a map or a portfolio of steps in the product development process that will then be followed through in the next stage, which is feasibility. The feasibility stage involves multiple sub-steps that almost always begin with identifying customer needs. Customer needs are identified in a positive sense, meaning you define what the customers want from their product. For instance, if we're talking about cars, very high level, customers would want a car that goes 0 to 60 in a certain number of seconds, would have certain cargo space, towing capacity, that sort of thing. At this point, you would define it first in a subjective, positive way, where you talk about the specific customer desires for that product. At this point, we talk about those customer requirements as being, again, subjective or aspirational. To identify customer needs, some techniques that are used in order to get information from the market are looking at what are called lead users or extreme users. So lead users are those that generally have a need ahead of mainstream customers. They're individuals often within your customers, but they're normally not in the purchasing department. They're in maybe the R&D department or engineering or manufacturing in your customers. They can also be identified in academia, outside in the marketplace, but these are users that have the ability to define a need that's unmet in the market. And that allows you to get in early in the product development process. So constant communication with these lead users is really very beneficial in order to identify these opportunities before the market in general identifies them. Extreme users are users who may use existing technology but push it to the limit. And they could be in the automotive industry. You can imagine that someone who uses a car or a truck, not according to the user's manual, or uses aircraft or drones in ways that aren't currently standard. So these extreme users can show you opportunities to make technology mainstream that currently is only using technology or products in very unusual ways. Specifically, ways to gather information on customer needs can include things like one-on-one interviews, which can be very beneficial. During the age of COVID, that can be challenging, but in order to gain information that you wouldn't otherwise be able to gain, communication directly with your customer group to gather those customer needs is one of the best ways you can go. Another way is a more formal method involving focus groups, where you would gather together potential customers that meet whatever demographic requirements you believe apply to a product, and you would normally pose a number of needs that you think you've identified and very basic solutions to those needs to get an early feel for what this focus group believes will be the most valuable. It allows them to hear other people expressing needs and responding to them. So it can be very beneficial to develop that voice of customer early on. Some advantages for interviews: they allow for better direct observation of customer requirements. You can go into many different use environments. Focus groups have the benefit of having multiple, individuals at one time and allowing them to hear each other's experience. Some of the challenges are they can be difficult to set up and expensive. Normally they would require somebody fairly trained as a moderator. It could require special AV equipment, that sort of thing. So when I refer to customer needs, I'm not just discussing customer needs that customers are aware of. So some of these needs are called latent needs. Latent needs are needs that the customers have but couldn't express. They wouldn't normally state it in an email. They wouldn't normally state it in response to a question. Where latent needs can be identified is, and this is something that's very important as part of this whole communication process in product development, is to actually observe customers experiencing the challenge that they're having. What that does is, given the fact that you know your capability, your company's capabilities, if you identify challenges that customers have that maybe they're not even aware of, you can look for solutions that actually make their life easier. And they're not things that they would just voluntarily bring out. In the automotive industry, something like the interval wiper. The interval wiper isn't necessarily something that everyone knew they needed, but once they saw it, they had to have it. And that is really an example of a latent need. The next stage is to establish specification targets. So here, what we do is we take the customer requirements and translate them into functional requirements. That being, if we talk about the customer wanting a certain cargo capacity for a car or a truck, that's fairly easy. You would probably normally define it in cubic feet, cubic meters, what have you. So you define the metrics by which you measure those customer requirements. The next step really is to generate these product concepts, and this can be rather informal. And this, from a communication standpoint, involves direct contact with customers, where once you define the customer requirements, you go back to the customers with those metrics and get more detail as far as what their expectations are. How fast would they want the car to go? You would describe attributes of the vehicle that you have in mind at a very basic level. At this stage, you could share prototypes that are very simple, basic hand drawings. They could be more sophisticated if you hit this stage, if you share something like computer-aided design files. But for the most part, this is still a fairly basic stage in the development process. After generating those concepts, and this can take quite some time, the decision has to be made to down select those product concepts. So at this point, what you're looking at is you're looking at reducing the concepts to those that are most critical to the customers. And in getting feedback from the customers, it's critical to evaluate each of those customer requirements and have the customers prioritize how they view those requirements. Not all requirements are going to be the same. For some people, they might value, a number of cup holders, perhaps even more than horsepower. It depends on the customer. In aggregate, for your targeted customer group, you need to go through and prioritize those customer requirements. And then with that down selection, more formal prototypes are created. These could even be alpha prototypes that visually represent what the product ultimately will be. Then once those are rated based on feedback from key stakeholders, customers, internal specialists who understand the market, then we go to the next step where we prepare for development. The key areas at this stage are still R&D and sales and marketing. When we go to the development stage, we move over to R&D and engineering primarily. And at this stage, once we enter development, we began first to focus on defining DFMEA, for instance, PFMEA. DFMEA is design failure mode and effect analyses, and PFMEA, process failure mode and effect analyses. You get into some of the details that the engineering department will be responsible for. They are the primary drivers at the development stage. Again, working with R&D for that handoff, but really further defining those more discreetly developed product concepts to the point where we can begin considering how those products will be manufactured, or in the case of a service, how those services will be automated through software and through training. The next stage we go to is validation. And in this stage, the key departments that need to be discussing the product development are engineering and manufacturing. In the validation stage, we ensure that whatever concepts have been developed and whatever concepts we understand can be built need to be reviewed through the manufacturing process to get better cost estimates of the sales price of that product. And there again, even though this is shown as a linear process, it can also be an iterative process. So at this stage, when we get feedback from manufacturing and procurement, we can get a clear idea of what the per product cost will be, and we can feed that back into our communication with customers to determine whether or not there's an interest at that projected price point for a product that we can actually make. This is a large challenge. This is the part of the process where we have essentially all of the steps defined that are required in order to make a product. We have, by this point, a beta prototype to actually show customers that would essentially be what we would manufacture. And this is the stage where we begin to make decisions with accounting and finance with respect to budgeting for CapEx, capital expenditures, and committing manufacturing resources to actually making a product. And then finally, when we get to the launch stage, the key players at this stage are, again, manufacturing, but also quality control, because at this stage we're talking about ensuring that we can control whatever processes we've defined in a way that meets our Six Sigma requirements, meets whatever high demands I'm sure your company has for ensuring consistency and the fact that the product that we're promising is actually delivered to the customer. And at this stage, to finish out this cycle, again, sales and marketing needs to be involved to reevaluate. Now that they have a precise definition of the product, they have beta prototypes they can go to customers with. They can potentially begin to get commitments, possibly POs, for this product to ensure that whatever it is that's being made will meet the expectations of the customer base. So at this stage, you can close out the product launch system. We do commercial runs for the product, and all the stakeholders should be comfortable and be able to sign on the dotted line that that product has been developed pursuant to the express customer needs and according to the abilities of your company to actually make the product.
The final topic we'd like to talk about today is data-driven decisions. Data-driven decisions are vital for creating insightful and objective strategies. In order to make these decisions, we have to efficiently understand how our processes are working. In order to do this, we need to evaluate the correct information. If we look at the wrong information, we can come to incorrect solutions. Finding the right conclusions starts by asking the right questions. Joining us now is Matthew Altieri. Matt, when considering how to evaluate a project, what questions do we need to ask ourselves?
So success, determining success in a project is one of those tricky things. I try to always say I measure success by measuring progress. And a lot of times we work on large, complex projects that take a lot of time. And if you look at it from too broad of a picture, it can be very easy to get overwhelmed. So to me, success is making sure you have very clear milestones along the way, and you make sure that you're measuring the progress from milestone to milestone, and you're taking that incremental step forward every time within a reasonable time to complete the project.
Great points. And what would be the value of setting these goals in advance?
Yeah, goal setting is a very important topic. So I think everyone can agree in today's world, everyone's trying to do more with less, right? And if we think about how we work, it has to be about how we work smarter, not just working hard. I think everybody's extremely busy. So to me, goals are the one thing that kind of ties everything together. If you can clearly set that direction and that focus from the beginning, it's the one thing that can keep your team, your company, yourself on track through the process to make sure that you achieve the target.
That's a great point. So how will we know if our new efficiency projects are working?
The easiest way to tell if an efficiency project is working is it sustainable? Is it repeatable, right? And can it function on its own? So if we were to switch out a whole team of people that was working on a project related to redesigning or reinventing a process, is it strong enough to survive a whole new team of people coming back into that same environment and being repeatable? And if you find that it is, then you know that you really have let's say, a very strong process and something that can drive change in your organization without impacting everything around it.
How will we know if our new efficiency projects aren't just moving costs somewhere else?
So a properly redesigned process, right, improves the efficiency of a company overall. So if you are reinventing or redesigning something for your own departments or your own benefit, and it simply moves work to another area, basically you're just moving your lost costs to another area of the business. And you're taking the efficiency that you've created and create inefficiency somewhere else. So what's really important is that you understand who are all the stakeholders that are going to interact with this process or even be indirectly impacted by the process. Work with them to understand their point of view to make sure that efficiency is gained across the entire organization.
What tools can simplify the process?
So in today's world, everybody is obsessed with big data. We should be no different. We've got advanced operating systems, tools such as CRMs that are gold mines for market information, customer information, application information, needs for what we need to create. So real important part of that is to understand how to tap into that information, organize it properly, and how it can make an impact on driving things like continuous improvement in your business. So coupling that front-end analysis from a CRM with a very strong back-end program like Lean Six Sigma for continuous improvement really helps to align organizational objectives for improvement with market needs, creating an actual solution that benefits both the company and the stakeholder.
And how should we respond if our projects don't meet their goals?
I think it's important for any company that you have to embrace failure. It's very difficult. A lot of people put in a lot of time. Sometimes there are very large budgets and investments tied to projects that don't work. But you have to empower your employees to be willing to take on the next challenge. So from our point of view, it's about how do you learn from a challenge or an issue you've had with a project, objectively look at why the project failed. And to me, that starts with really having a strong understanding of the root cause and a strong root cause analysis of a project. I think many times people fall into a trap where they say a project fails and they only go skin deep on the rationale, and in the next project or subsequent projects, they see history repeating itself again. Okay, so that root cause analysis is really, really, really important. Okay, that's the thing that you need to focus on. You need to empower your employees to obviously embrace challenges, not to fear failure, but we also have to understand objectively why did we fail so we don't repeat the same mistakes.
Streamlining processes and creating efficiency helps us work smarter, maximizes resources, and drives innovation. The world around us is changing faster than ever, and it's becoming harder than ever for established companies to change quickly and find a new way of doing things. After all, innovation doesn't usually come from a casual interest. It comes under a pressing need. And that's what we're facing today, a need. This need for efficiency and simplification will drive the creation of tomorrow. And if we collaborate and communicate together, we will be able to drive efficiency and simplification to a total company culture that will transform our business. Today, we talked about improving cycle times and reducing assembly times. We discussed how communication is critical and how data-driven decisions can create objective strategies. Always remember that efficiency is about a continuous corporate culture. At Nitto, it's built into our corporate philosophy and is something we'll never stop doing. We'd like to thank the team at Ford for having us here today and being able to talk about this topic. I invite you to reach out to any of the Nitto members you saw today. We'd be happy to talk with you and collaborate about whatever you'd like. Thank you.